Hello everyone, my name is NISZAANTHA, daughter of Balakrishnan. My matrix number is 068705. Today, my group members and I are going to explain about the high courts in Malaysia. So, let's get started. High courts were primarily established under the Federation of Malaya Agreement, which was officially declared on the 1st of February 1948. The High Courts in Malaysia are the third highest courts in the hierarchy of courts after the Federal Court and the Court of Appeal. Article 121 of the Constitution of Malaysia provides that there shall be two High Courts of coordinate jurisdiction, the High Court in Malaya and the High Court in Sabah and Sarawak. In the earlier days, the High Court in Singapore was also a part of the Malaysian court system. But later, on 9th of August 1965, Singapore separated from Malaysia to become an independent and sovereign state. Thus, the High Court of Malaya and the High Court of Sabah and Sarawak remained. Both courts presided over by the Chief Justice of the respective court. According to Constitution Amendment Act 1994, the term Chief Justice was amended to Chief Judge. Each of the high courts in Malaya shall consist of not less than 4 chief judges and not more than 2 other judges, whereas high courts in Sabah and Sarawak are allowed to have not less than 4 chief judges and not more than 8 other judges. According to Article 122, subsection A of the Federal Constitution, the present maximum number of judges is 60 in High Courts of Malaya and 13 in the High Courts of Sabah and Sarawak. The High Court in Malaysia has its principal registry in Kuala Lumpur, while the High Court in Sabah and Sarawak has its principal registry at Kuching. There are in total 22 High Courts registries across all 14 states in Malaysia.
Hello, my name is THIVYASHINI SHRIKUMAR and my matric number is 067784. The High Court in Malaysia are the third highest courts in the hierarchy of courts, and there are 2 chief judges in the High Court. The first is in Peninsular Malaysia, which contains 45 judges and judicial commissioners. The second is in Sabah and Sarawak, which has 11 judges and judicial commissioners. The High Courts have general supervisory and revisionary jurisdiction over all the subordinate courts and hear appeals from the subordinate court in civil and criminal matters, but generally confines itself to offences on which the magistrates and session courts have no jurisdiction. In criminal cases, no case may be brought up to the High Court unless an offender has been committed for a trial after a hearing in the Magistrates' Court. The jurisdiction to try all the civil matters includes bankruptcy or winding up matters, probates, and administration of the estates of deceased person. The High Court has the jurisdiction to try the civil matters where the cause of an action occurred within Malaysia, or the defendant lives or has his business in Malaysia, or the facts on which the actions are existed within Malaysia, or any land of the ownership of which is disputed is located within Malaysia. The High Court may hear appeals from magistrates and sessions court in both civil and criminal matters. In criminal jurisdiction, the High Court may hear all matters but generally confines itself to offences on which the magistrates and sessions court have no jurisdiction, for instance, offences which carry the death penalty. The courts in Malaysia are heading towards specialization. This move is fueled up by the desire to provide the best service to public in the form of dispensing justice fairly, speedily and effectively. In the High Court in Malaya at Kuala Lumpur, specialization is done by categorizing the High Court into Criminal Division, Appellate and Special Power Division, and Civil Division. High Court judges are assisted by Deputy Registrars and Senior Assistant Registrars, and each division has its own registry.
Assalamualaikum, I am NURUL AIDA BINTI JAINAL. My metric card number is 068055. Today I will explain about the High Court in Malaysia. So there are two High Courts having coordinate jurisdiction in Malaysia, namely the High Court in Malaya and the High Court in Sabah and Sarawak. The High Court may act as a court of first instance and appellate court. Every proceeding in the High Court will be heard and disposed of before a single judge. The High Court in Malaya at Kuala Lumpur has specialist divisions, namely, number 1, criminal divisions. These divisions hear cases in the exercise of its appellate or revisionary jurisdictions on any criminal matter from the subordinate courts. Number 2, civil divisions. These divisions hear civil cases inclusive of actions on foreclosure, tort, and contracts for services. Number 3, commercial divisions. These divisions hear commercial cases inclusive of admiralty, insurance companies winding up, agency bank-in, intellectual property, and specific relief act cases. Number 4, appellate and special power divisions. These divisions hear appeals from the subordinate courts, cases under the Legal Profession Act 1976, Act 166, and judicial review of administrative action and under specific acts. The last one is family divisions. These divisions hear matrimonial cases under the law reform, which is Marriage and Divorce Act 1974, Act 164. Formally, part of the civil divisions, the objective of specializations is to dispense justice in a more timely and effective manner. So, in the next part, I will explain about the criminal jurisdictions of the High Court. The High Court has jurisdiction to try all offences committed which are within its local jurisdiction on the high seas on board any ship or aircraft registered in Malaysia by any citizen or permanent resident on the high seas on board any ship or aircraft by any person on the high seas where the offense is privacy by the law of nations and the offences under Chapter 4 of the Penal Code Act 574 and those under any of the written laws specified in the schedule to the Extraterritorial Offences Act 1976, Act 163. This is exercising its original jurisdiction for criminal cases. The High Court may pass any sentence allowed by law. Normally, only criminal cases of a serious nature are tried in the High Court. For example, drug trafficking under Section 39B of the Dangerous Drug Act 1952, Act 234, murder under Section 302 of the Penal Code Act 574, kidnapping or adoption under Section 364 of the Penal Code Act 574, and offences under the Firearms Act 1971, Act 37, where it's involved capital punishment if the accused is found guilty. Under special circumstances, a particular case not involving capital punishment may be heard in the High Court on the application by the public prosecutor. This is provided for under Section 418A of the Criminal Prosecutor Code Act 593, Section 26 of the Courts of Judicature Act 1964, Act 91 provide the High Court the power to hear appeals from the subordinate courts according to any law for the time being in the force within the territorial jurisdictions of the High Court. Additionally, The High Court may also exercise its revisionary powers with respect to criminal proceedings and matters in the subordinate courts. This is provided for under Section 31 of the Courts of Judicature Act 1964, Act 91.
Greetings to all. My name is ATHIRAH BINTI AHMAD HAZIM with metric number 066542. Now, let us proceed to the next point. The High Court has the official authority to issue legal decisions and judgments in civil cases. Civil law is concerned with the rights and duties of individuals toward one another in private relations between members of a community, as opposed to criminal, military, or religious matters. It aims to compensate people who have been injured, allow the property to be recovered, and enforce obligations such as contracts and trusts. In layman's terms, the High Court have unlimited civil jurisdiction. Generally, they hear actions where the claim exceeds 1 million ringgit, apart from cases involving motor vehicle accidents, landlord-tenant disputes, and distress. Generally, in Section 23, Court of Judicature Act 1964, per limitations in Article 128 of the Constitution, the High Court shall have jurisdiction to try all civil proceedings where the reason for the action arose, which is an act which gives the plaintiff reason to file a complaint about the defendant or one of several defendants, lives or operates a business, the facts upon which the proceedings are based exist or are presumed to have occurred, or in any land whose ownership is disputed is located within the court's local jurisdiction, and notwithstanding anything in this section, in any case where all parties consent in writing within the local jurisdictions of the other High Court. Without limiting the generality of subsection 1, it is correspondent that the High Court shall have the jurisdiction that existed before September 16, 1963 and other jurisdiction in force within its local jurisdiction. Next, in Section 24 of the Court of Judicature Act 1964 provides the High Court also have a specific civil jurisdiction to include divorce and matrimonial matters under any written law, admiralty, as the High Court of Justice of England has under the United Kingdom Supreme Court Act 1981, bankruptcy or to companies under any written law which is related, appoints guardians of infants and generally over infants' persons and possessions, and grant probates of wills and testaments and letters of administration of deceased people's estates, leaving property within the court's territorial authority, and to change or revoke such grants. Also in Section 25 stated that in exercising its jurisdiction, the High Court should have all the power conferred in it immediately before Malaysia Day, as well as any other power vested in it by any written legislation in effect within its local jurisdiction, without limiting the scope of Article 121 of the Constitution, and the High Court shall have the extra powers outlined in force of the schedule, provided, however, that all such powers shall be exercised in conformity with any written legislation or court rules about the same, and without limiting the generality of paragraph 1. Furthermore, the High Court also has jurisdiction over the one which is known as appellate jurisdiction. Both criminal and civil jurisdictions are provided in Section 26 and Section 27 Court of Judicature Act. Both sections state that subordinate courts hear appeals. The High Court may also examine the record of proceedings given to it by the subordinate courts on any point concerning applying any article of the Constitution. Civil appeals, on the other hand, are governed by Section 28 of the Court of Judicature Act, which states that no appeal on civil matters where the amount is 10,000 or less, except on a question of law, and second, appeals relating to the maintenance of wives or children, regardless of the amounts involved. This means that if the appeal involves a sum of 10,000 ringgit or less, the High Court will not hear the case unless the lower court has questions about the law involving it only. An exception is made if the appeal is for support payments of the wife or child support payments of the child, in which cases the High Court will consider the appeal regardless of the amount of money involved in the case.